Good morning, everybody. Welcome to The Map, the Mental Health and Addiction Podcast. This long-running podcast, like Gunsmoke, is about bringing a real-life discussion to the mental health and addiction challenges facing 1 in 5 Americans in the United States. And joining me, as always, is my friend and yours, Willie Drinkwater. And Chris Long is somewhere in the swamps of Florida. She might be on Alligator Alley. Don't know where she is, but she might join us later. But Willie is here. Willie, who are you?
I am Willie Drinkwater. I've been in the field of mental health and addiction for 32 years now. I'm a person in long-term recovery myself, 35 years. I'm an educator for UMass Boston in the Addiction Counseling Education Program, where my primary course is addiction with co-occurring disorders, because dual diagnosis is the expectation, not the exception. And I also have a private practice.
And you come from the world of comedy.
Yes, in the 80s, I was a member of the Not Before Breakfast Big Mattress Players at WBCN, the Rock of Boston. I got to work alongside of voice extraordinaire Billy West, who, if you don't know the name, you know his voice. Ren and Stimpy, Doug on Nickelodeon, the Cheerios, Honey Nut, Be the Red M&M, Father Professor Zoidberg, and Captain Brannigan on Futurama. So
you sound like a boss jock right now when you did that. Hey, well,
there we are.
WFIL.
Well, I grew up in that New York area, you know, as like Cousin Brucey, 77, WABC.
77. All right. Enough of this frivolity.
Enough.
Okay,
and who are you, Andy?
I am Andy Bernstein. I am your moderator and co-host. I am a passionate individual about furthering this discussion about mental health and addiction through media programs such as this. So we're excited about our guests for today, but we got to give you, as we usually do, a nugget to help people. And this one is for young people who may be struggling with depression and anxiety during the COVID. A new study came out by the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. They undertook a study to identify the impact of playing a sport during the COVID-19 pandemic and how it affects student athletes' health. And the nature of the study was an online survey that conducted in October 2020. And the findings, they say, could help inform public health experts, school administrators, sports medicine, and mental health providers regarding the potential benefit of physical and mental health through organized sports. And they found that sports participation during the COVID pandemic is associated with significant mental and physical health benefits in adolescents. Those who returned to sport participation in fall 2020 reported lower anxiety and depression symptoms and higher physical activity levels. And again, this was the University of Wisconsin, and you can find it online and medrxiv.com.
Those are the people that wear the. Those are the people that wear the cheese on their head, right? The Wisconsin people.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
And they wear cheese, and they are big Packers fan. I wonder if that actually works for adults. I wonder if it's the same thing holds true. I mean, it sounds like
wearing cheese on your head.
No, exercise.
No. I mean, you know, when you exercise, it releases endorphins. So I mean, that's not a bad thing at all. You know.
Yeah,
feel good hormone.
What a great segue, Willie, because that is going to move into our special guest. Now, who is our guest today? Tell us.
Our guest today, I've known Mr. Jack Lynch, man, comedian extraordinaire. I've known Jack, I don't even know for how many years now. God, 20 years maybe? And stuff. Okay. He'll fill us in when he comes on, but he's also working in the field. I'll let him tell his own story and stuff, and we'll go from there. What do you think?
Yep. Yeah, and to piggyback off that, just to set in the stage a bit, Jack is from Meffa, and he
Meffa. Where you go out and you get a sandwich for lunch. Sandwich, right?
A sandwich, yeah. He's from Meffa, and his work, he's a stand-up comic, and he's a licensed addiction specialist with a first-hand understanding gained from his own recovery from alcohol and drugs. He founded Comics for Recovery. He produces and MCs shows featuring lineups of his comic colleagues to benefit addiction recovery organizations.
I thought you were going to say kamikazes. Comic colleagues, kamikazes.
Bear with me,
pretty
man.
close. Same thing.
Trying to keep it all together.
I know.
I'm doing the.
It's tough being Andy Bernstein. I know.
It is tough. You wouldn't want to be in my head, not even spend a day. It is. It's.
It's crowded enough in mine. So yeah, I can only
Oh
imagine
my
yours.
God. Oh my God. And then being codependent, I take on everybody else's stuff too. So then I'm really in trouble. Anyway, welcome to the show, Jack.
Welcome, Jack. Just got to turn your mic on there.
Oh, Mike, that's a new thing, huh?
There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Where's the mic?
Where's
Is this
the
thing
mic?
on? Is this thing on?
Yeah.
Sexual
Which
chocolate,
way is the
everybody.
crowd? Which way is the crowd? Yeah.
Whenever I think of Mike, I always think of Coming to America when he drops the mic. Sexual chocolate, everybody. Anyway, anyway, Jack, you are a comedian, obviously, and you are also in the world of addiction. How did your background start, or not your background, but how did you get started going from comedy to addiction?
Yeah. I know. It's interesting. I had someone point out to me, they said, wow, that's interesting. You fight life and death all day, and then you go out and try to make people laugh. And I'm thinking, I go, yeah, beat that altruism, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I never even thought of it. I was like, oh, yeah, that's true. And so
Right.
this person pointed out thinking that was amazing. But sorry, go ahead.
No, it's a vertical monopoly. Like you're like the Purdue Pharma, who creates the pills and then provides an addiction treatment center after they get you hooked.
That's right. That's right.
So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries at all. And interesting, the transformation. I mean, first of all, I've been in long-term recovery since 1984. I just celebrated 37 years last month.
Oh wow.
And you know, interesting. Like years ago, in my midst of my addiction, I was always obsessed with comedy since I was a boy, stand up and that stuff. But I used to hang out in the clubs when there was a boom here, but I never had enough, or I tried to get enough courage to get on stage, and I would get so drunk that, you know, crap would come out of my mouth. And, you know, I tried that maybe twice, early 80s or whatever. And so, but fast forward, early 90s, you know, I had been sober like 6 years at the time, and I figured I got to try this. And I kind of gave it my all, and so I ended up traveling for a lot of years, which was a lot of fun. And then I had this moment that was it, you know, I was on stage in West Palm Beach, literally destroying. And I just was like, in my head, I'm like, I just want to be home. I don't care about this anymore. It was the weirdest thing, this kind of revelation, like I made it. And I think I've been like that in my life anyway. I get obsessed about something. I do it. I make it work. And then after a time I go, okay, what's next? And I think that's the kind of creative brain I have, that all right, now I need something more fulfilling. And sorry.
No, I was going to say that hamster wheel of always, you know, trying to get something more.
Yeah. And so, but what happened was I went into this, that was 2006, I want to say, that I decided, you know what, I'll still do comedy, but I'm just going to stay in New England. And there was a time you could make a living just being in New England and be fine. But now things were so different. And I found myself getting very depressed, like financially, because I couldn't stay here and make enough money, you know, unless I traveled. And I just, the thought of just doing it all the time was kind of just depressing me. And I didn't know what was next. And what happened was I ended up, you know, after this huge funk, you know, I was probably in a depression for about a year. And a friend of mine recommended me, actually Woody Geisman from Right Turn, he recommended me to this dual diagnosis program that was in Cambridge. They were looking for per diem folks to help folks with dual diagnosis integrate into the recovery community. And what happened was I got into it and I loved it. And, you know, 6 months later, I was back in school because I loved what I was doing. And it was just the most natural transition for me. It felt like this is the way to transform, and it worked. And I love it, and I still love it. So
why do you think that is, that you love it? Because I can tell you, I'm not in recovery, I am on a journey, and I find myself, and I'm worked in the media for a long time. I find myself loving this space, and I'm not sure why. What do you think it is on your, both of you?
I think it's being totally human, human, and reaching out with compassion and empathy to people, who are going through a tough time,
Because aren't we all really, like, at the end of the day, I mean, comedians and people who like to laugh, a lot of it is just how we process sadness and be able to then express it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Jack?
Yeah. Excuse me. And I think about it when I was a kid. I mean, I used it, like, for me, I used it to kind of connect with people. I also used it to get out of a lot of stuff.
Exactly.
If I got in trouble, I would just make someone laugh and they would forget. Hey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, about the only time that it isn't a healthy thing is if you use it as a mask. I mean, I have a therapist that I was going to for 6 months, and I finally said to him, I really think I want to start doing some work on myself. And he gave me this look, and I said, yeah, for 6 months I've been coming in here and entertaining you, and stuff. And I'm sure you had a tough day with other people, and I'm coming in here and I'm cracking jokes and telling you stories, but I was never talking about my own issues. And he was like, oh, Jesus. I said, yeah, well, I'm kind of good that way, So then I got to work on myself. But I mean, the only time it isn't healthy is if you use it as a mask.
Well, you could pick up the sad clown. I can.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who's like, you're masking something. I see it. You're not being honest, with yourself. So, so my question to you, so then my other question, I hope you are okay. I'm just curious as far as a lot of comedians. We've had a lot of comedians on over the years. I've had Jimmy Tingle, in one form or another.
Jenkins.
Joey Carroll, Lenny Clark. I've spoken with.
George is going to be coming on soon. Mac.
George, okay, yeah.
Stuff,
I mean, there's so many comedians out there. Why do you think, and they've shared their personal struggles, and then they all seem to get older and go into recovery? What do you think is the impetus for that? Like, is
pain?
Right.
Pain is a great motivator.
In other words, do you need to have liquid courage to be able to go on stage? I mean, how is it just something that every comedian does to be able to?
Yeah. It's just an interesting business because it's the most enabling business. I mean, think about it. You can drink while you work. And if you think about it when you're younger, like that'd be a dream job, right? Like you can have in the crowd sending you drinks. I mean, Kenny Rogerson used to have a great line, like somebody would send 3 beers and he goes, "Oh, you must want the long show." And so people would send in more beers.
Right. Keep it coming.
But it's just an enabling, like, think about it. Like, that's the only job where it's acceptable. Music too, musicians too, where it's acceptable to have cocktails sitting right there. I mean, any other job, if you had a job and you're sitting at your desk and you had cocktails there, the boss is like, "What's going on?" Like,
right.
Call HR. Let's get down. Let's get, fix this.
Yeah. You could, you could lose yourself in that process. I'm going to gather. What do you think about, like, how has your comedy changed? Or has it changed from when you were drinking to being sober? Have you tweaked your act at all, or is it still on point?
Well, I think, for me, like I said, I kind of dabbled in barely in the 80s when I was drunk, but I think in recovery, and I honestly think in the midst of my addiction, there was nothing that laughter had left me. Like I would hear something and go, "That's funny," and I'm thinking I should be laughing harder at that. And there was this other part of me, I had all this pain. And honestly, like I was sober about 6 months and I was at a coffee shop with a bunch of people after a meeting. And I remember laughing so hard and tears. And it felt beautiful because I don't think I had laughed like that since I was a kid. Because there was a period of I only drank for about 13 years, but there was this period where everything was just dark and gray, and just rarely did I laugh or have a genuine laugh. So when I get into recovery, I mean, and then into comedy, I feel like, and I think George McDonald always says, in order to know what's funny, you have to know what's serious. So, and he's always said that. I love that line, and I have to quote him because George is one of my favorites. But but I mean, so for me, eventually, just I know being able to look back, and obviously, I mean, I'll give you an example. But I'm probably going a long way around this. But I remember being at a friend of mine's year anniversary, and I'm sitting, his dad was there, and, we were all speaking for my friend, and this one guy is speaking and telling these horrific stories, and the room is just exploding with laughter.
Yeah, it's the only place where, like if the earth person, those without addiction issues, walked into some of our meetings and stuff, they would be mortified by what we're laughing at, horrendous things that we did and went through, and be like, why? How can you laugh at that? It's because it gives you a way to talk about it, and you don't forget it. Then you don't
Jackie
forget it.
And his father looked at me and said, "Why are they laughing? That's horrible." And I said, "Because we've all been there."
Right. We can relate to it. Sometimes I used to listen to Stern back in the old days, and Jackie, my favorite part was the news, and Jackie used to start laughing. I don't know if it was like if he really was laughing or whatever, but Jackie Martling used to like howl on it. It's like, oh yeah, a car overturned. So I get it. Okay. So with that said, I mean, I'll ask this to both of you, working in addiction, how does that help people with clinical depression laughing? How does humor, what does it do?
It's endorphin release, first of all. I mean, you get an endorphin release. It lowers stress hormones. I mean, I can go on and on. I did my master's thesis on the benefits of humor and the therapeutic relationship. And I mean, it increases your white blood cell concentration. Doesn't mean you don't get sick, but you tend to bounce back faster if you have a sense of humor.
Okay.
When you laugh. So,
and Jack, what do you think?
I mean, I think, it's actually a good question, but I think it's, I don't know, somehow just finding the humor in things. I don't know, like kind of, it's obviously it's like the flip side of depression, right? But I mean, it sometimes it's harder than not to move people like that, to move people from one side to the other side. Even just, I mean, and I've had some clients where they would so depressed, and then occasionally I would say something and I would see them laugh, and to me that was like the best thing ever, even just for a minute, And what Milton Berle used, I'm sorry I'm quoting all these people. Milton Berle said it's good. It's like getting a mini vacation, like 1 minute from the troubles of your day, like that.
It's human. It's the human element of
right.
Yeah.
But how do you see like I know for me, like I can look at the world and I can take sadness and I can try to come up with at least to be able to laugh about stuff and find the humor in it. But how do you, we say, humor is good endorphins and stuff, but how is there a way to like create that? Like, is there any suggestions on how somebody might want to start finding humor? Like, how do you do that? Or is it just an innate ability?
I mean, you can enjoy humor even if you can't perform it. I mean, I don't think you have to. You have to be able to create humor, but
but how do you find like? Is there a way to do that? Because we talk about it, but like, how do you, like, is there like, oh, you look at things, you look at the brighter side, kind of reframing things? Is there a way to reframe life challenges?
Yeah, I mean, you can always. I mean, and you just. A lot of times when they're talking to us, they're talking about problems, and I automatically try to flip it to, is it a problem or is it a challenge? If it's a problem, you're probably not asking for help and you're isolating. If you see it as a challenge, you're taking it on and you're asking for help, which is a sign of strength. So, I mean, there's a reframing in that way. I don't know how that fits in with humor, but I mean, I've given people, prescriptions. I want you to watch 3 episodes of Rick and Morty this weekend.
That's what I'm saying.
And then get back to me, and stuff. So
yeah,
I think cartoons, animations are, it's it's, it isn't threatening at all. It isn't threatening. Like you're not, my wife now is obsessed with Schitt's Creek, and stuff. It's like every time I turn around, she's watching like 12 episodes in a row. And I know that's because of the COVID, and she really needs to laugh. It's one of those shows where you don't need someone else in the room. I can hear her laughing from the next room that I'm in, so.
Right. So finding something, I'm just trying to find out for people out there who may be struggling right now during the COVID. And it's like, we know that mental health issues are on the rise. You hear about suicides all the time. My wife just told me about somebody she knew, or a friend of hers, coworker, had tried to kill himself twice in a weekend. Right. So how can we get through this? I mean, Jack, do you have any thoughts, or are there some things that you share when you're talking to people, from a coaching standpoint or having that discussion? Do you have any?
I would say I would tell everyone to go to any show that Jack is putting on. and they should go to any show that Jack is putting on, and they'll feel better by the end of it. Seriously, seriously. That's a
and I'm actually doing a show tonight and tomorrow in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Okay.
Are you? Tell us about that.
Where were you performing, Jack? Get it out there, man.
I know I'm throwing my glorious life, but it's the Roundabout Diner in Portsmouth. Tonight and tomorrow, Boston Comedy Festival. Tonight with Steve Sweeney, Jim McHugh. Tomorrow with Jim McHugh, Joey Carroll. But we've been doing them since end of November.
Okay.
Mostly just Saturday nights, but now they're doing 2 Fridays a month with Sweeney.
I think it's George MacDonald that used to talk about the once a week comedy shows in the restaurants. It's like where the jokes never work, the audience never laughs, and the show never ends. Right? Yeah, it's comedy hell. God.
I'm just thinking about back to what you were talking about, Andrew. With the depression and this, suicidality and all that stuff. And I just, interesting, the comedy tragedy, the masks. Like I never understood that when I was a kid, but it's so true. It's just right on the edge. And I think about it. I think comics and obviously people with mental health struggles, I think we're all very sensitive to everything. So, and the hard part is, like I grew up a sensitive kid. I'm a sensitive guy now, and ladies. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
But I think the beauty of being sensitive is when the laughter's there, the joy is there. It's amazing. But also when the sadness is there, it's there. It's all felt. Like I think we feel all of it. I mean, I think for me, I can only speak for myself, and I think it's the same with clients. They feel everything. As the weight on the shoulders or this incredible joy, what Willie and I try to do is help people find in between, for the regular times in their day and kind of some balance. And
yeah, that's great. A great point. I mean, it's funny. I'm doing a project with a former athlete turned actor who has been retired, and I had a conversation with him. We had like a 3-hour conversation the other day on Zoom, and I got to tell you, the guy got real emotional when I started talking to him about hosting this project. He's like, he got really sad and welled up, like it was almost like here's an actor, and here's a guy who's accomplished so much, but yet was so sad. And he said that he found himself focusing on the one person that didn't focusing more on his critic than the people who actually
little hypersensitivity. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be liked by everybody. Yeah.
And I think it's really paralyzed him because he's a phenomenal person, but I think he's just, so beaten. He seems so beaten down that it has precluded him. That's my take, that he seemed very sensitive, like the external factors really started to weigh him down, because it's hard to self-promote yourself, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, and even doing stand-up in rooms where you could be destroying, right? But if you have a guy like in the front row that's just sitting there like this, I mean, early years of doing stand-up, it would make me crazy. Why isn't this guy smiling?
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going on with him. Right?
No.
So now I don't care. I just go, okay, he's not having fun. Maybe he doesn't get it. That's fine. Or he doesn't like me. That's fine.
I don't care. You flip him the finger, you keep going,
Right. So I think as long as you're, I mean, for me, I grew into like, it's okay. I'm getting most of these people to laugh. And I think that they're not getting someone to laugh and obsessing about that is kind of, it's like attachment. They have an attachment thing. Like, it's like they're trying to please their dad, that one guy that's not laughing or whatever it is. Yeah. It's this old wound or something. I mean, maybe that's it. Or maybe they don't speak English.
With comedians too. I mean, there's been research over the years on stand-up comics, and it's an amazing number. It's like 90% of them were the middle children in their family where one or both parents had a mental health and/or addiction issue. I mean, so a lot of times we were the clowns in the family where when you felt the tension rising, you'd do something, you dump the spaghetti bowl on your head and everyone would laugh and go, "You're such an idiot," but it would break the tension in the house.
That's so funny because my mom actually did that to me. We were having dinner.
But she dumped a bowl of spaghetti on your head?
Yeah, and as in therapy, I started to question, did she really purposely do that in front of my stepfather to make me the fall guy? Right? Like literally, was this passive aggressive way to take the attention off herself and onto me?
I agree with Jack, though. I think a lot of comics are very sensitive people. They're very sensitive to the world around them and to other human beings. And,
developing that shell is really hard. I mean, I know I struggle with that. It's like, how do you develop a shell where external factors don't always affect you when things go wrong? Like, how do you
have them not affect you without numbing yourself out with drug or alcohol?
Right.
I mean, that becomes a challenge too.
Right.
Yeah. And I think even being a therapist and being a comic, they're similar in the way you're trying to read people. In some ways, in some ways you're trying to read them, not to like the insane part, but just you can kind of get a sense of where they're at with their affect. And like if they're saying they're feeling great and they're not smiling, like, there's all this. So I think you tend to read people, the body language.
Yeah.
Do you try to, so going back to the guy who, and I know I want to be sensitive every time, but going back to the guy who's in the audience, the guy or gal who's in the audience who isn't buying your program per se. Do you?
Well, that's because they're stupid. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, right. But
that's how you win them over, talking to them like that.
Yeah.
Well, it was like I heard a comic say, and Jack, you have to tell me who this was. It was like if it's either a case of it in stand-up, it's like I was great, the audience loved me, or I was great, but the audience sucked. Yeah. Your ego couldn't put up with. Robin did a bit about that once, about dying in front of an audience and what the back of the brain is saying to the front of his brain.
Right. Is someone doing construction or is someone locked in a closet?
You know what? I was just trying to figure it out.
That's my house. I have carpenters upstairs. They're finishing the kitchen. Happy wife, happy
those
life.
Bagpipes. Yeah, those cloggers upstairs, right?
Yeah. I like that TV ad. Yeah.
Right, someone locked in a closet.
Yeah, right. It's like, let me out. Lurching the.
I'll be right there, honey. The show's almost over. Okay.
Right. Right. I'll be up there to help
when
you.
The show's over.
To feed the guy. I'll be up to feed him in a bit. So yeah, because it's like, do you focus in on that person at all, or is that person irrelevant? Like, okay, I'm going to get you to like me because you're not laughing at me. You don't.
I used to, but I don't care anymore. It's weird.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I may make fun of it or, for a second or not. Sometimes I just ignore it. I mean, it's like hecklers. I'll ignore them usually just, initially as long as I can. Because what they would, yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then we have some standard lines that we say to hecklers.
Yeah. Like what? What do you guys say?
Yeah, you don't want to know.
Well, you'd say something, I'll clean it up. But like if someone was just totally obnoxious and destroying the show and the crowd's just getting angry, you just say, folks, this is what happens when cousins make love,
Yeah. Or you might say,
that was the clean version.
Or you might say, excuse me, miss, do I bother you on the street corner when you're working? I mean, there's all sorts of things.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. I don't knock the spatula out of your hand at Burger King. It's all like stock lines.
And then they laugh. And then
but the thing about a stock line, too, is that there's one comic out there that's really pissed because he was the first one to say it.
Oh, yeah,
you hear the standard lines. Well, someone got screwed,
Yeah.
Someone had their line stolen,
Everybody steals something from somebody, right? It seems like.
No. I mean, not if they can help it,
Now, what, in your act, and I want to hear about, I want you to tell us about Comics for Recovery, but in your act, what are some of the things that you try to cover?
Are you an observationalist? I guess he's asking your style.
Yeah, like what's your comedic stylings?
Yeah, so as far as, I mean, just in general, it's kind of everyday, sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of,
observationalist, Carlin style?
Yeah, observationalist, sarcastic.
Welcome to Boston.
Yeah, what are the odds? What are the odds?
What are the odds?
An Irish guy from Boston. What are the odds?
So good.
I get people that come to Boston from out of state, and they're going, God, the people in Boston are so friendly. It's like, where are you at friggin' Faneuil Hall with the rest of the tourists?
I know. When I got here, I'm from Maryland, and I got here, and I'm like, man, it took me a long time. Now I think people here are funny as hell, but it's just a different sense of humor. It's like
it's a biting sense of humor.
Yeah, if they like you, if people like you, they're going to give you a hard time. But if they don't like you, then, so I've heard some really funny stuff that when I first got here, really, it's, I didn't take well. But like now it's like I left my gas cap on and somebody goes, hey, a-hole, you left your gas cap on your thing. Like, or somebody called me Captain once. Hey, Captain. Right? Just like funny. Like, what do you
I think she's trying to saw her way out of the closet now. Can you God. She sawed her way out of the closet.
It's like Houdini or like some magic tricks going on up there.
I shouldn't have left the power tool in there.
Right? Well, is that a bone saw you have up there?
It's going to be. It's going to be a bone saw, yeah.
So tell us about Comics for Recovery and kind of the, what you have coming up and, what you're doing now.
Yeah. And you would ask about my style too. I'll get into that and then recovery. Yeah. I mean, a lot of my stuff is, the best stuff is the true stuff, the true stories.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff is like things that really have happened or it's kind of about how I grew up. And because I grew up with deaf parents, which kind of,
oh, wow.
I never used to talk about it on stage because it was so personal. I didn't want to share it. And believe it or not, of all people that convinced me that I should talk about it was Greg Giraldo, who died of an overdose 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
He was amazing, very prolific writer, amazing comedian. But so, talking about that and a lot of times it's that, a combination of real stuff with some exaggeration, or I'll combine a couple of stories into one. And, I'll make it about one friend rather than three friends. I'll make it all one character kind of in it,
okay.
Kind of morph them together. And then, the Comics for Recovery kind of came about. I realized like some of my favorite shows were the recovery shows. And recovery shows were the only ones. We used to do one in New Hampshire every year, Thanksgiving weekend. It was a fundraiser for, I believe it's called the Half Moon Festival. They have like sober camping trips and they do all these little, these cool events. And they'd have three comedians or sometimes four that do 30 minutes, then a cigarette break, 30 minutes, then a cigarette break. And it was amazing. Like that would never work in a regular nightclub. But the thing was, the crowds, they all know how to listen because they've sat through meetings.
Right.
And they're all in recovery. And a lot of the humor tends to be, inside humor with people in recovery for those shows anyway. But what I realized doing those shows and many others I've done is it's the most, we're raising money for addiction program, or sometimes we're just trying to do something so people in recovery can find a safe place to come laugh. It's not a bar room. There's no cocktails being served. And it's the most rewarding thing. Like I've had people come up to me. There's one I do every year for more. And we do it in Arlington, Mass Organization of Addiction Recovery. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of stuff for advocacy in this state, getting, trying to change laws, get more treatments, change Corey laws and all these other things that are affecting people, prisoners coming out, helping them re-enter back into society. They do a lot of cool stuff for addicts. And, but people there that have been at the shows, there's a lot of halfway houses and stuff. They'll come up to me after and say, that's the first time I laughed in recovery. And I always think back to that time, like I told you, in the coffee shop, when I laughed and I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And they thank me. And I feel like, in these shows, we take people for a ride for like 2 hours, hopefully help them forget about their troubles for the day for a couple hours. And, because I always feel like, I think about what my sponsor used to say, it's not you against you, it's you against the world. And so, I think for myself, my inner battle is always my own stuff, me against me, like this. And I feel like if we could get people to laugh and just, have fun for a while, those are the most serene places to be in your head, for me anyway.
Yeah. Do you perform like with treatment centers or?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
I have done at treatment centers. I've done treatment centers. We did one like 2 years ago to detox. I didn't even know it was a detox in the cafeteria, but people were at all different stages of detoxing.
Detox, yeah.
Yeah, and it ended up being it was at Spectrum, and it ended up being a blast. Like clinicians were there and the staff, staff and clients, and it was really fun.
That's cool. No, it's cool. And I guess, so I was going to ask you, what's your takeaway, like from people who come to your act, both, is there something that you try to deliver to the audience when they leave, like some kind of nugget that they take away, like
Is it like pass it on?
Well,
yeah,
I think I just like to say, like show that, hey, you can have fun in recovery. Because I think a lot of people, they have this, I know for myself, when I was getting to the point of stopping drinking, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, because it was such a big part of my life. Right. And I thought I couldn't have fun without it. Everything I did revolved around a cocktail, or a substance. So I think just to say, hey, we can have a blast, and there was no substances, we're all just drinking coffee and it's just more real. I think that's the bigger piece. And the creative piece too, like for folks that are wondering about being creative, because that's the other myth that people buy into. You can't be creative unless you're high as a kite, or look at Hemingway, and I'm like, well, it didn't end well for Hemingway.
Yeah,
right.
So, no, yeah,
right.
Yeah, creative. It's funny. Creativity. I've been doing a lot of research for one of my projects. I'm dived in, and I love it. Right, it gets me completely out of my head, researching and coming up with finding photos. On the internet for around the topics that I'm covering. And it's just like, that's my creativity, right? Like, where I'm writing and it's like, God, if I can get out of my head, it's just the greatest thing in the world. So you don't have to necessarily be a stand-up comic in order to get out of your head.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's times I'm even waxing my car and I'm out of my head. I'm just in the zone. And then like a neighbor will come up and say hi and startle me because I'm in this like meditative mode. There's that place, Well,
I think there's such an emphasis now. I mean, one of the big terms now is mindfulness. Everyone's talking mindfulness. And, I was talking to some friends the other day and I said, I do mindlessness. And they go, what's mindlessness? I said, mindlessness is when I throw on Metallica and I dance with my golden retriever for like a half an hour, just crazy. That's, and at the end of that, then I can be calm and relaxed and maybe do some mindfulness, but I mean, people have to learn how to kick it out too,
right. And have
in a healthy way without drugs and alcohol,
Right.
Yeah, and you mentioned something, and I want to get your website or a place where people can hire, bring you in.
How can they find you, Jack?
Yes, but I want to say something. I was thinking about this, on the takeaway, and one of the things that I remember is going to a Billy Joel concert when I was, the last one I think it was in '99, right? And I stopped listening to him, and now I listen to him again for whatever reason. I think he's great, right? But I didn't like him for a while. Anyway. When he finishes the concert, he always says, don't take any crap from anybody, right? That's the last line.
Really?
Yeah, that's the last line. But he actually says, don't take any SHIT from anybody. And that was 1990, and that still stays with me. It's like, here was this great concert, and at the end of it, and don't take any crap from anybody. And it's just like totally stayed with me.
Yeah, and don't give yourself crap. You deserve more.
Right.
Don't give yourself crap, man.
Do you have a website that people can reach out?
It's funny. I got it, but it's totally under construction, of course.
Like Willie's house?
Comicsforrecovery.com. What's that?
Yeah. Like Willie's house?
Yeah. It's at my house.
It's at Willie's house. That's where it's being developed. That's the website developers.
I think she saw her way out and she ran for the driveway. I don't know. Okay,
I don't think they understood website, so they brought wood and They didn't understand what I said. I want you to build me a website. They thought, literally.
Yeah, that's right. Brick and mortar website.
My
site is at williedrinkwateraddict.com.
Bipolaraddict.co.
Moodswing.com. Okay.
But you can literally just punch in Boston comedian Jack Lynch, and you'll find me on Facebook or Instagram. Instagram is Jack Comic.
And you're performing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. At Jack Comic. Yeah. LinkedIn. I'm on everything. I'm on.
I'm on all.
See you everywhere. Yeah.
Are you for farmers only? No. Have you seen that website?
Yes. What's it called?
For farmers only. It's like a singles dating group for farmers. I kid you not.
Farmers only. I thought you said performers only.
No, I know. I did too. Farmers only.
For farmers only. Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you for coming on. I hope you'll come back.
Oh yeah. And I got a few minutes. How long are you guys on?
We're on
until noontime.
Till noontime, but we
okay.
Yeah, so hang out.
Hang out with us.
Up to you. I mean, I don't know what else you got going on.
No. It's you're more than
I
happy.
can go
love it. Like Merv Griffin,
noon,
you'll stay with us. You'll stay with us.
Like noon, I'll just check out quick. That's all.
Oh, okay. No, I love it.
If you want, if you have me,
Well, we want
I'm not begging.
We want you.
We want you.
We want you, Jack.
Willie actually had a topic that he was going to bring up, so maybe this is something we can have a conversation.
It may be something that you've come across, Jack. I got this off the Fix, but it's about people now having, and I don't know if you're experiencing it, with clients and stuff, but existential anxiety, meaning that people are. They're at that stage where they're cooped up so much of the time, they start thinking about their own mortality and they start having a fear of death.
That's like me. It's been awful. It's awful. It's awful.
And it can be crippling to people. I mean, I joke all the time, but I'm sort of serious. I'm 65. I'm at my midlife now, and my kids are like, "You're going to live to be 130?" And I said, "Absolutely," and stuff, So, I mean, but I think Americans in general, death is a topic nobody talks about, really. Nobody wants to confront it. And now that the economy's been slowed down so much and people are home, they're really thinking about. I mean, I have had quite a few clients that are really doing a self-reflection too. They're doing like, where have I been? Where am I at now? Where do I want to go? I mean, I know therapists that I have offices up at the Cummings Center with me and stuff. I mean, the majority of them are saying that once this COVID breaks, they're not going to go back to full time, in their office at the Cummings Center. They may go in maybe 2 or 3 days a week to do new admissions because you really want to eyeball somebody when you first are starting to work with them. But it's like, why should I be leaving the Cummings Center 3-4 nights a week, 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night when I can be doing teletherapy?
And I'm going to die anyway.
Yeah, and I'm going to be dying anyway,
And it's true because I even noticed, like I was laid off from April till literally a couple of weeks ago. And so I found myself having a lot of free time, especially in the winter. Summer, I could handle it because I could be out and about and doing things. But I noticed myself, I had way more anxiety than I've had in years. And in those late night, as you're laying down, all right, who's going to show up at my funeral when I die? You start thinking about this dark stuff. And like I told you, and in my mind, I'm thinking, well, you should have celebrated me while I was alive. Like,
thanks a lot.
This posthumous celebration, a party I can't even be there. But they that happens a lot. I mean, in general, I always think the irony of that. They have this huge thing, and everyone talks about how great the person was, and well, you should have told them before. Like, you should have had the party first. But I definitely found myself, questioning my mortality, and especially if you have some health stuff going on, you start, well, what is this? I'll overthink everything. I'll go in a dark hole.
it's so dead on. I mean, what I've been thinking about that, my own mortality, and then I have elderly, my mom, and, my parents are elderly, my father-in-law is elderly, my uncle, and my mom was sick a couple of weeks ago, and I told her, I said, don't you die on me, please. I said, I'll be devastated if you die, so don't effing die.
Well, it's even, I mean, I'm seeing it pop up even on Facebook. I was talking about my golden retriever, Charlie, and stuff. And one of my friends from college, who's, 64, 65, he was saying, yeah, I'd love to get a golden now, but, I'm sort of thinking about, how many years do I really have left? And it's like, wow, I never really even thought along that line. If I got another dog now, would I be able to live, longer than the dog and stuff,
It's scary. Go ahead, Jack.
No, I was just gonna say I feel I'm quoting all these comics, but Bill Campbell, great guy, very funny guy.
I know Bill.
He has a thing. He talks a lot about his family and growing older, and he said how his wife said, I think we should get a new bed. Probably going to be the last one we buy. And he goes, and I forget how the rest of the bit goes, but it's like, because they're retired and his kids are out of the house, and but it was just an interesting way to look at something. Oh, it's going to be the last one.
My uncle said this yesterday because we're Steeler fans, and we were talking about.
Sorry to hear that. Go ahead. Yeah.
I know, right? Well, we're Pittsburgh fans. We're
My buddy
terrible.
Billy's a huge. Yeah.
Not the Patriots were 7-9, but that's okay.
Billy Martin, Jack, you were going to say?
No, Billy Gardell is a huge Steelers fan. He's a Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Yep, and he Pittsburgh guy, and what's interesting, I was talking to my uncle, and we were talking about the Super Bowl, and we finally figured out. It took 7 Super Bowl championships, but it's like, okay, Tom Brady has mastered the quarterback position, right? Newsflash, but we talked about the Steelers, and I said, so have you been watching sports? He said, and he's 80, and he goes, well, as a Pittsburgh sports fan, there's nothing going on, and it's going to be a long time, and I'll probably be dead by the time the Steelers are good again. But you haven't. And I'm like, wow. It's like he's really, at 80 being in lockdown for a long time, you're starting to question your mortality. So I guess the moral to the story is let's hope we get this vaccine soon, because I'm really getting cuckoo being at home and no place to go. And I mean, do you guys think it'll change once we are able to kind of resume?
I think it'll ease it up. Yeah, sure. I mean, I would love to see the comedy clubs open again. I mean, having a place where, to go and vent and,
Yeah. Just real quick on Brady, we're talking about Brady. I was talking to my friend the other day, and I go, you think about it, like, we didn't know who Brady, the backup quarterback for the Patriots, was until Bledsoe got hurt. Right. We didn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
I know.
And now he's like the greatest quarterback ever at this point. It's crazy.
Think about
I have to tell Jack that, wait, Andy, I just have to tell Jack that the best gaffe that I had with Yvette, my wife, was last summer, Jack. It was a Sunday night at home, and we're just kicking around and stuff. And I looked at her, and my dog's name is Charlie, and I said, Yvette, I said, in some ways, I kind of hope I go before Charlie does, because I'll die of a broken heart, man. I love this dog so freaking much. And she turns to me, and I'm not really thinking at this point. She turns to me and she goes, well, what if I were to die before you? And without even skipping a beat, I said, well, do I still have Charlie? And she looked at me, and she was like, are you kidding me? And I said, no, yeah, oh yeah, I was kidding. And she goes, no, you weren't. And I said, yeah, well, the bottom line, honey, the dog is unconditional. You aren't, and stuff. But what a gaffe! It's like, but do I still have Charlie? Wonderful gaffe.
Wonderful gaffe. Now, as far and going back to Brady, I was just going to say, not that I don't feel bad that for your pain on that one, because I hope you got out of your doghouse out of that one, no pun intended.
Yeah, well, if it weren't for the fact that we've been married for 34 years at that point, I would have been dead in the water. No, actually 40 years. God, if she heard that, I'm really dead.
Well, you can't hear over the carpenter. What I was going to say, about Brady is, and I was not a Brady guy, right? Like I never was. I liked him at first. Thought he was got a little too full of himself. I got to tell you, the guy, I've never seen anybody master the position. He mastered the position. I gotta say, he's like the
He's a
Queen's
leader.
Gambit.
He's a
He's the
leader.
Queen's Gambit. He is playing chess out there. He knows exactly what people.
I'm sure he transformed that clubhouse too. I bet they all started watching film and they started taking his lead there. You know.
Yeah.
Talk about a guy who puts blinders on too. You know, like if you gotta, you know, it's like I'm not going to get caught up in the fact that I'm an NFL starting quarterback. I'm not going to get caught up in that. I'm going to break down film. I'm going to be a film room junkie. I was going to say, but I'm literally going to just sit and watch film and I'm going to be the smartest player on the field. I got to imagine, because it's crazy, because he doesn't have the physical talent of the
natural attributes of what you would imagine a quarterback has. Yeah.
Right. But he knows where to be on the field. He knows where the receivers are. It's unbelievable. So
yeah,
I think he's got a big future ahead of him.
And to talk Gronk out of retirement, I mean, come on, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know what the Patriots, I mean, you know, what they actually, you know, not to go into football talk, which I could do all day, but
it's Bruin seasons now. Now we're 9-1-2. We're cruising.
I can't even get to a hockey game. Anyway, thank you for coming on today, Jack. And
Jack, it's a pleasure, man. Good to see you.
Can I say one more thing, or you have something?
No.
No, I just, when you were talking about COVID and then like clubs, Willie was talking about clubs getting back. And it's funny because I've done like sporadic shows. I originally went from March till November before I did anything with nothing. And, but so we did some shows but just the way things are, it's just been interesting. But we did a theater in Connecticut, and the crowd, because it was a theater, the crowd could sit, you know, they spaced them out, but they also had to have their mask on the whole time unless they were drinking their cocktail, whatever. So it was just interesting making people laugh. And I hear
muffled.
I felt like I was telling jokes to hostages. It's like they get duct tape, and I started making fun of it.
That's good. That's good. Good night, everyone. Last question.
Good night, everyone. That's my time.
What do you want to know about it? Yeah, okay.
I'll be here all week.
By the veal, it's young.
I'd like to thank all the tables and chairs for coming out to see me tonight. Right, Jack?
Is there a last question? Is there a mentor that you had, Jack, in comedy that you try to emulate, or somebody that was an influence for you?
I don't know. It's kind of funny. I think it's kind of a more kind of a, you know, all these different
mix
comics that I like for different reasons. There was a guy who's gone now, unfortunately. This guy Drake Sather, great writer, really dark. He died probably 2006, 2007, but so bitingly sarcastic. Like, I loved watching him, but I also loved like early Leno, like the Leno, like, you know, late 70s, early 80s Leno stuff. I thought it was just, I thought that the jokes was just so well crafted, and he could work so clean and just destroy. I mean,
he's the only guy I ever saw do a 2-hour show and clean the whole 2 hours. I mean,
right.
Why not?
And then, you know, but like there's people that have different influences on me. I mean, I even like Dennis Miller's, his sarcasm.
Like that. But,
you know, and obviously Carlin, and, you know, and even like reading, you know, listening, believe it or not, to Lenny Bruce, and reading Lenny Bruce's autobiography. If you get a chance to read it, it's hysterical.
Okay.
How to Talk Dirty and Influence People.
That's funny. Like Dale Carnegie, right?
It's a great book. I mean, obviously it was tragedy, but I don't know. I think a combination of him, Carlin, and a lot of the Boston guys I loved. I always looked up to the guys here, Lenny and Sweeney, and Gavin, Kenny Rogerson, Joe Yannetti. You know,
Jackie Flynn.
Jackie Flynn's great. Yeah,
he's
very sarcastic.
Yeah, I know his sister Jeannie, and
I know Jeannie. I know,
of course, Jeannie knows. Yeah, Jeannie is. You met Jeannie before, Willie.
Yeah.
She and we actually did an event. We worked with Kevin Stevens, the hockey player, and we did an event.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was cool, and it was
Cross-check recovery radio.
Was that at the Region? He did something at the Region. They
Yeah,
did something.
exactly.
Yes.
exactly.
I was there.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah.
So I worked with his sister, and we started the foundation Power Forward, which is how we kind of
Oh, yeah.
all connected. There it goes. It comes full circle. But we had Bobby Fairley there, and I was asking Bobby, and I said, he came to the after party, and I asked Bobby, I said, tell me, do you think this is the best line ever? I said to him, I said, do you think there should be more comedy around addiction? You know, like the show Mom, could you see more comedy around mental health and addiction? And he goes, well, you haven't watched my show, I'm assuming. And I go, what's that? He said, Louder Milk, about a guy, Ron Livingston, who runs AA meetings. Yeah. But he was an old Rolling Stones author, a writer, and he then started running AA meetings, and he's mean. He's just awful.
Yeah.
He goes, so obviously you haven't seen it. Well, it's on DirecTV. And I go, well, in New England, DirecTV is like having a cereal bowl on the roof. And I said, Jews don't get on the roof. And he goes, he goes, that's not true. I said, why is that? He goes, Fiddler on the roof. And I'm like,
oh yeah, good comeback. Quick comeback on you,
brilliant.
man.
It was brilliant. So
bitch slapped you.
Yeah, but Fiddler on the Roof never had a sequel, so
there you go.
That's right.
There you go. So. Real funny guy. He's funny, but he, because we were talking about Mom, and we know there's the show Mom, but I think there should be more shows out there that talk about this.
And that's Chuck Lorre. And Chuck Lorre.
And Chuck Lorre, right.
He does a lot of shows about with addiction themes in there. Yeah.
Yeah, Eddie Gorodetsky, I guess.
Eddie Gorodetsky was Mom. Eddie Gorodetsky was 2.5 Men, and he was a BCN guy. He was the one that got Billy West down to New York finally after Billy got sober, and then Billy took off.
So we need
more. He's like a Cheapo Records, I think, or one of those records.
Yes,
Cheapo. Yeah. I'm writing this down. I need to do research on Cheapo Records.
He worked in a music store too. That's where Charles found him. Charles Laquadero.
Yeah.
This was a guy that would be borrowing $2 every day to get back to Roslindale. And my wife is on Celebrity Worth one night, and she goes, do you know how much your friend Billy West is worth? And I said, no, honey, what? Tell me. She goes, $35 million. But it just goes to show you that, without sobriety, without recovery, you don't go anywhere.
Right. Keep grinding.
He finally got sober. Man, he took off.
And he channeled the time he spent in a bar and drinking or whatever and using drugs to further his career. Well, this was great, gentlemen.
Jack, thank you very much, man.
Jack, thanks for coming.
Pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I'll do this. This was so much fun.
Oh, thanks good. We'd love to have you back. Absolutely.
Definitely have you back, man.
Willie, I'm going to call you sometime soon and say hello.
Okay, do that.
Catch up. I'm so glad you reached out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Man. It's been a
Jack
while.
Lynch. Thank you. That's our show for the week. Please
check tomorrow in Portsmouth.
Portsmouth. Go to Portsmouth. See Jack Lynch.
Next week I'll be at the Burger King in Saugus. Okay, come on.
And I'll be at the Kowloon, right?
I'll be at the Chuckle Hut in Poughkeepsie.
or Giggles. We're confusing people now.
Oh, God.
All right. Well, that's the map for this week. Visit us on Facebook at facebook.com.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Jack. Pleasure, man.
There's our music.